Well, space is the next frontier in investing, and between Virgin Galactic's recent IPO, Elon Musk's ongoing space ambitions, and the recent creation of the U.S. Space Force, there's a lot going on right now that's literally out of this world. And here now to break down this theme in more detail is Andrew Chanin. He is the CEO of ProcureAM. Thanks so much for joining me today, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so there's a lot going on right now in the space industry, and I mentioned Virgin Galactic. What do you think the impact of that is going to have on this industry as a whole?
So Virgin Galactic actually happens to be one of our top holdings at the moment, and what I think is so incredible is this is one of the first billionaire space efforts to actually go public. So it's available for retail investors and institutions alike. And it's something that I think was very important for the broader progress of the space industry as it evolves, because when they launched it, everyone was wondering, are people going to believe in it and want to purchase the stock, or is it something that they don't think is realistic or a viable company? And what we've seen is that numerous research houses have now picked up coverage on it, and they have some pretty grandiose expectations for the company. So right now, one of the big focuses is actually space tourism. So bringing people from Earth for an experience of a lifetime, in outer space. And that is, kind of a game-changing thing for any company to do, let alone a public company. And at the same time, they're also trying to work on hypersonic travel from point to point. So they're working on a lot of things that can certainly help the space economy and beyond.
Yeah, and speaking of billionaire space initiatives, do you think that this sets the stage for potentially SpaceX from Elon Musk or Blue Origin Jeff Bezos public offering?
I wouldn't say that would rule it out. Now, they're both some very interesting individuals. One in that Elon has a publicly traded company in Tesla, and he has certainly felt some pressures from different angles on having a publicly traded company. So he might have some of his own experience that say, what, maybe I want to keep it private. And he has been doing a pretty good job of being able to raise outside capital while maintaining to keep the company private. Whereas Jeff Bezos actually has been selling roughly $1 billion worth of Amazon stock every year in order to fund Blue Origin. And so he is actually, if he was his own country, he would be near one of the top 10 largest spenders on space, just if he was his own country. So it's pretty incredible to see what these different visionaries are doing. Some of their aspirations are competitive with each other, some are completely different. So I think the big drive is whether they'll go public or not is whether it fits for them, but so far they've done so well at being able to work with what they have at their disposal that it hasn't been necessary.
Right, well, we know that there is heightened interest in this area, and you mentioned Virgin Galactic being a top component of the UFO ETF. Can you give us an update on what else is in there that investors can have access to through this ETF?
A lot of people look at space and they have kind of a different opinion of what space is, but space actually affects not just the governments and militaries, but our everyday lives as well. So on a daily basis, you might be taking Uber on a ride, and GPS technology is something that's a satellite-based technology. We've also been hearing about mega trends like 5G and cloud computing and all these other data-intensive industries, and for those to be successful, they will likely be relying on satellite-based infrastructure. So there's kind of so many different types of ways that companies can plug and play in space, but right now the fund holds a lot of satellite companies and communications because those have been big drivers of this $416 billion industry in 2019. So it's kind of exciting to see how companies are engaging with space, using it, and making it accessible for humans every day. So you'll look at companies like Maxar is another large holding, and they're a satellite company. Companies like SES, Intelsat, and companies from all around the world that are specializing in different areas of space. And then we also do have in a less of a weighting, because they are very important, but they might not be pure play, so it's in a diversified tranche. Some of the larger aerospace and defense companies that are big players in space, but it might not be the biggest thing of what that company does.
Yeah, and as we continue to see developments in space, whether it's with Virgin Galactic and their ambitions or the other different use cases, the U.S. Space Force obviously needing partners and suppliers, what are your expectations for where we're going to see this industry heading in 2020?
it's so difficult to try to predict this industry because some technologies work, some don't, and some are reliant upon other technologies. So it's really difficult to say what exactly will happen. That said, a lot of the technologies that are being built today are actually enabling some of these other companies to see their initiatives come to life. And so one of these big things that's happening right now is kind of the emergence of reusable rockets. So you don't have to scrap your rocket when you're done. It'd be like throwing your plane away after it just landed. So that's going to be a huge cost saver, time saver, and it will allow us to ship things into outer space even cheaper. The other thing is that technology is changing so that satellites are actually smaller and lighter. And one of the ways that they judge how much something is going to cost to send into space is by pound. And so that number is coming down significantly. So I think we're kind of creating this environment for smaller startup companies to also emerge into the space economy and try out what they're doing because the cost of them doing so are significantly lower. So I think we might see a lot more smaller emerging companies come up. We'd love to see kind of a fertile environment for them all to succeed. I think they'll look to the larger publicly traded companies as an example to see, is there demand for this? And I think UFO would hopefully be one of those benchmarks for them that they could see, okay, there is investment demand, there are people looking to look at publicly traded companies, and this isn't just institutions, it's also retails, and even people that want to educate their kids about investing in outer space. UFO could be a way for them to teach them what this industry is composed of. And I think one of the really neat things about an ETF is that you can take a long-term approach because there is an index behind it that isn't just set it and forget it. There's actually a team that's building and researching and studying the space industry. So a former director of the Space Foundation is one of those very important people that helped develop this index. So he is constantly looking at the world of space around him. So someone that invests in this fund can know that the index is constantly looking at new companies that are emerging, companies maybe becoming less space focused, and they can be removed from the index. So someone that wants to look at the emerging space economy from today and also have components of tomorrow can hopefully be in this fund and experience this as the index changes.